Welcome to Bat Therapy, mental health through the lens of comics and film. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We're your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about Big Hero 6, and we're really excited because we actually have someone who I think is going to be perfect to talk about this movie with. So we actually have Manami Yamamoto, and she is a licensed marriage and family therapist and expressive arts therapist, and she's also the founder and president of Blue Humming Therapy. So her work actually focuses on psychotherapy and psychoeducation with a strong commitment to supporting diverse communities and dismantling the stigma surrounding mental health, and especially in underserved populations. She's actually a global advocate for mental health and wellness with a mission to create safe, inclusive spaces where individuals feel seen, heard, and understood. And this is actually across countries and cultures. And so we'll hit on why that's actually pretty perfect for Big Hero 6 here. So welcome, Manami.
Thank you so much for having me and a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I believe you actually were born in Japan, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you're now in California?
Yes, I am in California now.
So we're going to be talking about something taking place in San Francisco, which just feels like you are perfectly
Yeah,
set.
that's perfect.
Yeah, it was like a
Yeah.
combination. Yeah, one of the things I did love about Big Hero 6, like the city that it's set in, is just a combination
It's so
of
cool.
those two. It worked so well. It was really awesome.
Yeah, there was definitely this point where, because I had forgotten how it was set, and I'd be like, oh, we're probably in San Francisco. And then the bridge in particular, the Golden Gate Bridge, but it's all Tokyo-fied. That's when my brain started going, wait a minute, hold on. Something's different here. Yeah. How was it watching this for you?
I was so excited to watch it because, it's about me, San
Yeah.
Francisco. And I see all elements about Tokyo as well in the movie. So it's really wonderful for me to see that movie.
Yeah, for sure. So, I know one of the reasons that you wanted to talk about this movie was talking about inner voices for people, and specifically parent inner voices. And I guess first, before we go into that, I think, Keaton, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've had a marriage and family therapist come on the podcast before. I've probably touched on, oh, hey, this is one of the folks that can do therapy with you.
Mm-hmm.
But Keaton, we haven't had anybody yet, right?
We have not. No, we have not. Well, now we have.
Now we have, yeah. So, Manami, I'm wondering, not to put you on the spot, but could you maybe share a little bit about what is a marriage and family therapist?
Yeah, so I'm in California. So marriage and family therapist is a license in California. So in a different state, so we have a different name, like a clinical counselor or like a psychologist. But when we get the license about the psychotherapy, so it's called marriage and family therapist.
Yeah. And so, one of the really neat things that I like about marriage and family therapists is we had an episode where we talked about, for example, couples therapy. We were talking about, hey, superheroes being in relationships, and use that as a jumping off point to talk about what couples therapy could be about. But as a psychologist, a lot of times I'm trained on a person, where marriage and family therapy, you're looking at that unit a lot of the time when you're doing treatment.
Yes. So, the title of this, therapy. So, like a focus on marriage and the family. And then I really think a family is the basic stuff to learn about the relationship or loving or the compassion bonding, like a human stuff. So that's why, I really like to focus on family. So this is really basic for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, Keaton and I, we've talked a little bit about, I mean, our growing up, we had different families. So I had
Yes.
mother parent together my whole childhood. I know a lot of people with that had divorced or all these other separate things. Keaton, you've talked about being raised by a single mom.
Yep.
So I don't, yeah, it's so interesting how that family makeup can make such a huge difference.
Yes. And then a lot of like animation and movie. So talk about the family. So you
Yeah,
notice because they, keep telling about the family and the friendships because this is the basic for human being.
yeah, that connection to other people.
Yes.
Yeah,
And yeah, so even in the movie, it was not a typical family, right? It was their aunt that
yeah,
checked in on them, and then the two brothers, they had each other, but yeah, and then outside of that was his core circle of friends that he had at the school and the professor, and so it it really is interesting how ha- we I feel like we are kind of getting away from that idea of this is what a family looks like. This is
yeah,
what a normal family looks like, because so many people have it different, and you can't say that's not a real family. It absolutely
mm-hmm,
is. And I love that it's just like you said with like how you felt about how the movie was about you,
mm,
that representation is so important. Like every time you turn on the TV, it's like this wonderful nuclear family with a golden retriever and three cars in a nice neighborhood. Like every
mm-hmm,
time, like it would be that gets frustrating, right? Because that's not reality for so many people. And
yeah,
so I really do love when you see these like like kind of against the grain
mm,
families, and it works, and they show that it works. It's not one of these things where every time they show it, it's like completely dysfunctional because they didn't have this or they didn't have that. No, they make it work, and they're still a loving family.
Yes, I really appreciate you mentioned about that because we all unique and they coming from very unique farming style. So everything can be possible, but sometimes like we overthinking about what is the ideal family. But
mm.
that's not true. Like, we are all unique. We are coming from different background and that's okay.
Yeah, that ideal or normal are
Yes.
such dangerous words. I was actually working with a client the other day, and granted it didn't have to do with this family piece, but they kept saying this isn't normal. And then they got frustrated because they said, but the situation wasn't normal. And so it was like exactly when we see things as normal or not normal, then you're trapping yourself in a box that usually doesn't exist. And then it just layers all of these struggles on top of it because you're fighting against feeling like you're out of place when you might be exactly where it makes sense to be given the set of circumstances. So yeah, I love that's right. I even forget that their aunt is a big part of it because it's such a it's clearly such a wholesome, connected, loving family that you don't even think about the fact that, oh, right, so this is the aunt. And she even makes some comments. Should I have read some parenting books? Maybe. But, they just are there for each other. And they're even there for Hero, who, I mean, at the start, he's getting himself into all sorts of trouble.
But oh my gosh, I did really love that. Like he's getting himself in trouble, but it also seems like it's something that's happened plenty of times before, and they're very much used to it.
Mhm.
His family's like, okay, so we gotta get you from jail again. We gotta, okay, where were you fighting your
Yeah.
robot? It very much feels like that stereotypical, he's so smart that he just can't help but get himself into trouble. So, Manami, what what drew you to suggesting this movie in particular?
Yes, because we have like a big hero like a Baymax in there.
I love
And
Baymax.
that character is like I'm really into that character because actually in a clinical setting, I'm using that character so many times.
Ah.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to, share with you so why I'm using that character so many times in a clinical setting.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So are you literally talking about this character, or is it more like you're personifying this character in some way?
Yeah, both.
No.
Yeah.
He's a very it, I guess. But Baymax is just, yeah, just a wholesome, uh, just a really good job being created by Hero's brother. What was his name? Tadashi.
Yeah.
Tadashi did such a great job creating Baymax because he was trying to make this just wholesome robot that would help you open up and just like be taken in and healed, and he nailed it.
Yeah, it was like a medical robot. Like that's what was so cool was
Need Baymax.
it was just there for you to be healthy. And what I loved about it is the same way Baymax would focus on, oh, a hurt arm or a hurt toe.
Mm,
It also scanned for neurotransmitters, and so at that
yeah, that
point,
was cool.
you're looking at mental health,
And it
right?
was looking at hormones,
Right.
and when
It's
he
looking at
diagnosed him with
yeah,
like being an adolescent, that was hysterical. Yeah.
but it wasn't one of those things where, oh, it doesn't do that because
Yeah.
that doesn't count. Like I love that they
Mhm.
included that because it's just as important
Yeah.
as those physical wounds that you might have. It's like, okay, I'm picking up that you're sad.
Yep.
What can we do to fix this? How can I help this? And even along the way, he's not saying, okay, you're fixed now. He's saying, hey, if you want me to,
Mm,
I can go. All you have to do is say it. Otherwise, I'm here for you as
yeah.
much as I can be. And I absolutely loved it.
Yes, and that's the point. So he is really wonderful. He kind of presenting, I am here for you. I
Mhm.
will support you. So that's the message like a Baymax is offering always. And
Yeah.
that's so healing for everyone, like for human. So we always like need that kind of person. I'm just here for you to help.
Yeah. Yeah. It it's hard to describe, but and even the way that you just I can see how you could come off very Baymax like in just how you bring things up, because I think sometimes, I don't know, sometimes when we're there for people there's still a pressure. And with Baymax that pressure is not there. He's very, I keep wanting to say innocent, but that's not really, I don't think that's the word I'm going for. But he's not forcing in one way or the other. I think the only forceful thing he does is when he doesn't let his like software chip or whatever get swapped out because he's seen what it's going in a really bad place, and that's going to hurt Hero in the long run. I think that's the only time where you see this really like strong, like, okay, hold on, holding the line. But he's just so soft and
There's no
caring.
ulterior motive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? He offers that kind of like a neutral position. So if you need the
Mm,
help, I can support you. But if you don't need, I just watching you. So that's kind of like all therapists want to be like him. Like,
hmm.
he can offer that neutral, safe space for you.
Yeah.
And you can always ask me if you need a support. Otherwise, I can just be here to watch you. So that neutral stuff is great. And I can see like, Baymax has a white color of the body. So kind of like, telling you like neutrality.
Mm. Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't give you any color for you. You can give me the color, but I'm very neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an
Yeah.
interesting point about the coloring of Baymax too. Yeah. It is kind of, you make of me what you need.
Correct.
Yeah.
I also really do. So I love the way that he was just kind of utilized in this movie, because this is essentially a movie about grief.
Yeah.
It's him dealing with the loss of his brother, and not only that, but also the anger that he turns that loss towards. And it's so interesting when it happens and they show it in the movie. It's like he is hurt over his brother, and then all of a sudden it dawns on him, oh, I can put this on someone. This is
Mm-hmm.
someone's fault. And it's almost like that made him feel better. It's that thing. It's like a tip that we have, that's like, if I can figure out the reasoning for it, that'll make me feel better. And that's not it. It's one of those things where I feel like it's such a false positive, because you think
Mm.
that is what's gonna fix everything. Like that quest for vengeance that we talk about so often with Batman, right? Like, oh, one more criminal and I'll be good, right? If I get this guy, then I'll be satisfied. But it's something that's like a hunger that just doesn't stop. And Baymax, just being a computer program, immediately picked up on it. Like, that's not gonna work. Like, I just did the math in my head. This isn't working, right? But I do really love how they show him, and he's just this absolutely brilliant person. But at the same time, like, as humans, there are times where it's like, no matter how strong we are, no matter how rich we are, no matter how smart we are we are still put in completely helpless situations.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mm. Yes. So that movie is actually really succeeded to like a kind of showing the place, like, people can be very vulnerable. So, when we are living, like, we have a moment like we will be very vulnerable, hopeless or powerless. And it's kind of like, the movie is showing like that's okay. So that's about us. And then Baymax is pretty much like accepting that's okay to be vulnerable.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
his way is really great. He's not gonna fix it right away. He's more listening to. So what's the problem? And it kind of helping him like how, people can cope with. So that's a great about the Baymax, and I'm usually like using him in a clinical setting. So that's a way to support each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be a really big adjustment for people too, where they're not used to it, and so it's really uncomfortable.
Right.
And so you can actually have times where actually Hero does this in the movie where someone will go, "No, stop just being supportive and being there for me." Like Keaton, like you were talking about, we get stuck on, oh, this is how you solve a problem, or this is how there is a problem that needs solving, or we
Hmm.
have to answer, create a solution, no X, Y, or Z. And so sometimes the very act of being Baymax can people don't know what to do with it
Right.
because we have so I think also we just have so many other things in life where the expectation becomes, okay, I'm gonna plop down here, you're gonna give me an answer, you're gonna sign something off for me, you're gonna tell me which way to go. And so sometimes that Baymax is really hard for the hero in the situation to take in. It's like, no, 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 look, I'm gonna equip you with a bunch of stuff so you can fight with me, and then I'll understand what you're supposed to be. And then Baymax is just like, well, I'm still just Baymax. Here I am.
Yeah.
And Hero eventually he gets it and he can be vulnerable, but it takes him a while. But I think that that's just it is a really great analogy, a really great example of what you can literally in therapy. People will sit down and say, I really want therapy, and then fight against the therapy because it's just so foreign. You're not sure what to do with it.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, it's going into going into therapy, especially when you're first starting, it's extremely difficult because you're essentially going against everything that you had before, right? Like, even if
Yeah.
you were one of those people that didn't mind talking to people, it's one of those things where before therapy, you were talking to someone that you knew,
Mm.
right? Or you were talking to someone that was probably biased in some way. Like, let me tell you about this situation. It's like, okay, as your best friend, I'm all ears, right? But now when you step into a therapist's office, it's like, wait, what if I'm the bad guy?
What if I
What
find
if
out
I'm
things I don't want to know?
what if I'm the problem? Wait a minute. Like, what if wait, that's trauma, right? It's things like that. And even like in Hero dealing with it in like dealing with the grief in this movie. Another thing that I noticed that a lot of people do is we get lost in busy work. It's like, okay, I'm hurting right now. How can I push this aside? How can I not deal with the hurt right now? And finally, he does break down and he's like, my brother is gone. And there's that moment, and it's so wholesome. But before that, he was just like, we got to do this. Got to do this. I need to do this. This has to be done. We have to move this way. And he's just go, 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 go right after his brother dies. It's like the whole time. And in addition to having Baymax, something that's also so important that they did really well here is he also had a really good circle of friends around him.
Oh, I loved his
Yeah,
friends. And they,
Tadashi's like
yeah.
other like
Hmm.
like the other people, the other students in his lab, like they were there for Hero throughout the movie,
Yeah.
and it was really really great.
Well, and one of the things they don't really touch on in the movie, but so I grew up with a extremely intelligent brother. Keaton, you know.
Yes.
You grew up where I grew up. When I went through school, oh, you're your brother's little sister. I'm like, oh yeah, I am. Uh,
That's me.
that's me. Extremely intelligent, very smart, and I would go around as the younger sibling and just kind of observe things. I mean, he found his people, but at the same time, when there are certain things developmentally about you that are different than the people around you, like it can take more work, or or it looks different than we're getting back to like average or normal, quote unquote. But it one of the things that I think they alluded to it, they hinted at it, but they didn't fully focus on was the fact that so Hero in the beginning, he's all over the place, right? He's fighting with robots and he's betting money and he's racing and he's doing all this stuff. And his brother's like, "Hey, check out this lab that I work in." Cuz Hero's like, I don't want to go to college. I'm just going to keep doing this thing, let me be me." And his brother's like, "Sure. But hey, stop by my school first." And then you just see him light up cuz he finds his people. He finds his people who he just like instantly, oh my God, you just see how quickly they all tie together. And it's even cooler because they're his older brother's friends, but like that doesn't matter. It's so great to see that click. And I also, I mean, I work with people who tend to be, I was joking with someone the other day, like, those of us that do the work we do, I do severe and persistent mental illness. We love the misfits. We love working with the people who it might take them longer to find, hey, this is my place. These are my people. But it's so great to see that click in this. And so yeah, Keaton, I think that's part of what's so great about all those friends that he makes is sometimes there's just something where you realize, hey, we get each other. There's
Yeah.
some thread that we all understand, and they click and connect so well with him, and he really needed it. I mean, he was off on his own
Yeah.
in the start of the movie, doing his own thing, kind of just going wherever the wind took him.
He was a 13-year-old that had graduated high school already.
Yeah, what the
He
heck is he
was
supposed to
yeah,
do?
what's he gonna do? What's he gonna talk about
Yep.
with kids his age, right? Like
Yep.
he's all by himself besides his brother, and then he loses his brother. And so
Ugh, yeah.
thankfully he had people that were at least on his level when it came to like science, right?
Yep.
Because
And they knew his brother, and yeah,
yeah,
they
yeah,
there's definitely something for like they could speak his language in a
yeah,
way that really, I mean, everything around him there was technology. There was always some sort of like technology piece. And so
hmm,
they really knew how to relate to him through that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yes. So you when you see that movie, so you kind of see like a, heroes like self growth, like
Yeah.
psychologically he's growing, but he cannot really do that by himself. So he needs a Baymax, and Baymax can, so he has been like reflecting to hero. So through the dialogue and the interaction with the Baymax, so hero is like growing and growing, and he finally finds what is the best for him, like with his group, with his personality, so what kind of interaction he needs. So that's a kind of like a movie of like self growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes, yes. Because at the same time, the same way he was a 13-year-old that had graduated high school already, he's still mentally a 13-year-old.
Yes.
Like
Uh-huh.
he has the book knowledge that's
Yep.
way beyond his age, but emotionally he's still 13-year-old, right?
Yep.
And so this isn't someone who's the smartest person on the planet dealing with grief, which the thing is, I feel like the way his grief was portrayed was age wasn't even a factor in it,
Mm.
right? Like I feel like it would have hit anyone
Yeah.
that way. Like this movie really was for everybody, but that was one thing I thought about too. Like when he's dealing with all of this, I'm like, this is still a very young child. And the people around him, I mean, they're probably like college aged,
Mm-hmm.
college aged probably, but he's still just a kid, and not just a kid, but like barely high school age,
Yeah.
right? Like, and
Yeah.
so yeah, and so he still has a lot of growing up to do. They have all the puberty jokes in there, right?
Those
And
are
so
so
he's
great. Yeah.
still trying to regulate his emotions, but Baymax the entire time is there and being completely open with him, has no problem telling him exactly what is going on. Exactly like, hey, this is what's happening right now. And he's like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. He's like, yeah, but this is what's happening right now.
And he does it in the most wholesome way.
Yeah.
It's not it's not judgmental. It's not to prove a point. It's just, hey, here's what I've noticed. And so it really strikes me that you really take in Baymax with your therapy because it is true. I mean, that's a whole huge piece of being able to do therapy, no matter what your orientation is or what you're focused on for therapy is how do you approach it in a way where a person can open up and you're just being fully human and genuine and non-judgmental with that person. And because that's what a person needs to be able to be vulnerable and to have the growth that Hero had. But yeah, Baymax just he does just here it is. It's okay. You know?
Well, and I do also love the dichotomy of how grief is portrayed in this, because you see Hero on one side, but we can't forget about Professor Callahan
Oh
on the
yeah.
other side, who is dealing with the loss of his daughter
Yeah.
in this and that big
Oh,
reveal
beep
where
beep beep.
it's
You spoilers, but hopefully you figured that out by now if you're listening to this episode.
baby, just yes, if you have not yet, there was a movie that came out 10 years ago called Big Hero 6.
You've lost your chance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 10 years is a good long time, I tell you. Like, but yeah, that like that reveal that he was dealing with the loss and also again out for vengeance, out to
Mhm.
blame, out for someone. I mean, Alan Tudyk's character was at fault, but it's one of those things. He's like he wanted revenge the same way that Hero did at the time, and you see like, okay, this is where this leads, and you
Yeah.
even see it when Baymax is in his red eyes mode that I call it, and it's like, okay, this is what vengeance looks like. It's very scary, it's very terrifying. No one is safe from it because and that's what I really love that they showed too is as Baymax is going after Callahan, he's also hurting
Yeah.
Hero's friends.
Yep.
He's throwing them off him, he's moving them aside because his focus is on one thing, and I love that they made it a machine being focused on it. It
Mm.
literally could not snap out of it without the chip being planted
Yep.
back in. And that is what happens when someone has tunnel vision on the wrong thing, right?
Yeah.
And so there's so many different things that I saw in this movie that I really, really love.
Yeah, it's a really great point that you're talking about where it's true. There's a lot of struggle to what's the answer or what's the explanation or let me have something to blame. And with that, something I can act on. I can't tell you the number of times where look, I work with people who might struggle to leave their house or to talk to someone they don't know or might struggle with a lot of things that other people might consider basic. These are also people that if there was a disaster that happened, they'd be the first one that I would hope to be around because I know that they would handle it. And so there's something about the brain where it helps to have something to target on. It can even help to have a crisis or something that you can act on. But like you were saying, we have to be careful because you can get stuck on, I think you called it a false positive earlier, where we can get stuck on thinking something is the answer when it's actually creating a ripple effect where it's adding on suffering to the pain that's already there. And like you said, where you might be so focused that you're actually harming yourself or the people around you in order to have that vengeance or that anger or whatever it might be, like in this case.
Yeah, when people are like acting on, so usually people get a lot of criticism and judgment about the behavior only, but not so many people think about why like people are acting out,
Yeah.
why people have this behavior. And then usually like I really try to help my clients and the communities. Yes, maybe behavior, like we can regulate the behavior a little bit. But at the same time, so what about like, we have a more compassion and understanding of the what is the cause of that behavior, what's happening to that person. So like it kind of like helping, the people to navigate to that direction, more thinking about why, people have that behavior, not just judging the behavior.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And so one thing I also like really noticed in the movie, of course, is Hero has his science project that he's working on, and all of
Which, oh my
his
God, like
yeah,
changes the history of everything.
right,
His
right.
project's a big deal. My
But
goodness.
all of their projects though
Yeah. It's true.
were really big deals, but they all had their own things. It was like they all had their labs,
Mm.
and they all were like free to just kind of express themselves and do whatever they want. And it honestly made me want to ask you, Manami, about what like expressive arts therapy. What
Mm.
can you kind of break that down for us and kind of tell us about that?
Yes, so expressive art therapy is a non-traditional approach for helping like people. So it's more like using the arts, like a different type of arts, like a drawing, like painting, crafting, or like a sound play, music, everything. So, and why we are using that approach is because that's safer for many people. Like you mentioned, like some people don't want to come to counseling. It's so scary, right?
Hmm.
So
Yes.
it's more like just like a more like a casual way, like people can engage with their feeling and they can express their emotions through arts or they can heal themselves through the arts. So it's more like a safer way for, some people they don't need to expose their feeling with the words. So that's the good thing about the expressive art therapy.
So when they go to a session for that, so it's not one of those things where they're sitting down and talking to someone, they're just going there and doing an activity.
Some people come to the session, but the more because I work with many like a minority and underserved communities, so I go their community and providing the group. But like some people don't want to hear that, clinical counseling. So it's more like
Right.
a group work through the arts and then they can start from there and eventually they start sharing their emotion.
Okay. Just like, I mean, honestly, just like with Big Hero 6, they were all the science projects, all
Yeah,
the
exactly
building
like that.
Baymax armor, all of this,
Hmm.
but all of that eventually led to Hero finally breaking down and dealing with the grief of losing his brother.
Yes, yes, right.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
there's a
really
lot of really cool stuff that can be done with creative arts. And because I mean think about it this way too, is that it's funny because so sometimes well we do mindful nerd moments, right? We focus on mindfulness and trying to increase that being present in the moment, but then we guide you with language. And if you're not careful, you actually can force people out of the moment or make it harder to express yourself if you're forcing someone to only do it through one outlet or forcing them to communicate it to you. You can actually separate someone from the very moment that you're trying to help them experience. So yeah, I love the kinds of I'm not trained in it myself, but I love the kinds of stuff that you're doing with that, Manami, because yeah, like if you're not comfortable sharing or you're not used to communicating about emotions, or maybe it's just not the right way for you to experience it, it gives you these other opportunities. And I love that you do it in a group too, because then your art is vulnerability. And so you're allowing your vulnerability in this group space that can then lead to that processing the emotions in a vulnerable way too.
Yes, yes. So, like art can access to unconscious better than words because, human has an ego. So we think we can express everything through the words. No. Yeah. If you really try to understand the emotion behind, so maybe it cannot be the word. It's word is symbolic already.
yeah.
So arts is helping them to express something like, unspeakable or, it's not the word, but they can just express who you are. So that's the good thing about the arts.
I really do love that because I know that like with the expressive arts, it's like you get them doing that and then you can kind of start to slowly introduce some of that uh psychoeducational portion where it seems like with the psychoeducation it's more of like giving them tips of how to handle things rather than necessarily someone going in and sitting down with the therapist. It's almost like a hey, here are some things you can try. Am I correct in saying
Yes,
that?
yes, yes, right. And I use a lot of movie or anime in that session because, people don't want to talk about themselves because it's too shameful
Ah.
or too scared. But they
Okay.
start talking about the movie and they kind of like, have a projection seeing themselves in that movie and start talking about, somewhere they feel comfortable to share.
Yeah. So
So
maybe you get a sense of which characters or which kind
yes.
of groups that they connect with, and you're like, oh, okay, so that's what's some stuff going on with you.
Yes. And Baymax, everybody said, I want Baymax at my home.
Yes. Oh
Okay,
yeah.
yes, I hear you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just big and fluffy. Just yeah. Just for a hug.
Yeah. I've actually there have been times where I'll joke with someone. It's like, yeah, like what do I care? Just just imagine a little therapist in your pocket. You just pull me out whenever you need me. But yeah, you got a little. Just imagine your little Baymax over in your house. You just pull them out when you need them. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really neat. Keaton, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I totally agree with you about how working on their projects and science absolutely first off, we don't give science and engineering and we don't give all that STEM stuff the artistic credit that I definitely think that it's due, but I agree with you where it's you working on a car
Oh yeah.
or
I
anything,
yeah, I mean,
gardening or yeah, all sorts of stuff.
yeah, I'm
There
a
all
huge
these ways.
anime fan, and
Yeah.
I a lot of the times I have Gundam model kits
Mm,
that I build. That's what I do. That's my thing. I absolutely love building them, and I don't do it enough. My therapist has told me, "Hey, you should do that more because
your
you
friends
need."
have told you that too, for the record.
Yes, I need to listen to Baymax and Heroes Friends. You're absolutely right. I need to do that, right? But yeah, those kind of things, just being able to have something to kind of focus on, and while you're focusing on it, while you're doing it, you still can't turn your mind off. So you're still kind of working through stuff there as you're dealing with it.
Absolutely. And you also it can also give you these targeted ways to work on things too. So imagine that you're you're putting one of your transformers together and you keep messing a part up and you start beating yourself up for it. There are these like moments where if you can find ways to work through it in these smaller, less uh, th- hopefully there's less kind of power to it than say other moments where say with depression all of that negative self-talk comes, but if you can find those ways to work through it when you're like doing an activity, sometimes
Mhm.
that can help carry over too, which can be really neat. I remember so once again, I do not do expressive arts therapy, but I've worked alongside people within the arts with folks that had mental health stuff. And I remember someone who really wanted to be able to do art to help them process their trauma. The first time they sat down, they walked out within 10 minutes. They got so frustrated. Now they do art all the time. And it was so cool to help them be able to just like build up their ability to be okay with the fact, hey, I'm not always going to get it the exact way that I want it. How do I find a way through that? And it was really cool to see how that then translated to other things in their life.
Yeah, so like arts kind of like helping them to kind of build up, like like they are have more tolerance for the vulnerability, but at the same
Yeah.
time, so it's kind of process for transformation. So
Yeah.
yeah, so eventually like people start getting the idea. Okay, so this is a way to heal themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Manami, I have one last question for you. We've been talking about the the therapy and how you see it within this movie. And we started off with being like, "Hey, you're actually the perfect person to talk about this movie because it's got this really cool, it's San Francisco, it's this really cool conglomeration. Different cultures experience and express emotions and grief and all these things in different ways. So I guess I'm just wondering what you think just like a person in this cultural mesh, how all of this might hit them, the things that Baymax is trying to do and this like process of grief. Like what do you think it would be like there? Cuz you probably have a really good sense of like if you mix America, United States and Japan, what might you get?
Yes. So Baymax is a kind of symbol of like a loving and a care, and then
Mm,
somebody who is with you all the time, helping the process. And then that presence needs for everyone, not just about the culture, not about the gender, age, or socioeconomic. It doesn't matter. As
yeah.
human, we need that kind of presence. But in the real life, we don't have that presence sometimes. For example, people coming from like a challenging family or background, sometimes, people don't have that like, real figure. So that's why I'm helping them to imagine that character inside of them.
Mm,
Because even they're seeking somebody at their side, sometimes we don't get it.
yeah.
So it's kind of like a helping the people to grow that kind of nurturing figure inside of themselves and talking to their inner child.
Yeah.
You'll be okay. I'm here for you. So like, bring like a self-love and self-compassion. So that's,
Yeah.
I have been working with so many people, not just the culture, like everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, want to definitely wrap things up with giving you an opportunity if there's anything on your end that you'd like to be able to share with our listeners about what you do or things coming up for you.
Yes, working as a psychotherapist, and I think, not just the mental health, I really want everybody to understand what's the wellness, what's the well-being for themselves. And then not just like a medical treatment or mental health treatment. I really want people to think about what is nurturing for themselves as human being. So just like have that self question, like, more often. And then if you need a support, like, I'm happy to, offer the support. And other like, professionals are happy to offer the support as well. But the first step is what's nurturing for themselves. So I wish everybody go like a love and a compassion for themselves.
I love that. And I think this is a great movie for giving some tips on how to do that.
Yes, yes. It should be like a psychology book, psychology.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should
Love
have
it.
Psychology 101,
Yes,
Big
yes,
Hero 6, and throw in a bunch of other anime comics, all the good stuff.
yeah. And I really appreciate like you talking about anime and comic because this is a great way to like share like what is important for many people, not just like straight
Absolutely.
traditional education, but it's a different way to help people. So I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, we absolutely, I think, given the expressive arts piece that we were talking about before, you definitely that hits the nail on the head on why we did this thing. We wanted to hit people from an angle of you don't need to be focused on your mental health or on therapy, as odd as that sounds, but for some people that's not the end. That's not how they naturally connect. So how do you naturally connect? And we love nerdy stuff too. So that was
Great.
the bonus.
It's perfect. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast and chatting with us. And thank you. Yes, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JBS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.